computer's working. It's your presentation. There you go.
You ready to go? Awesome. Hi, everybody. Glad to see a lot of you stuck around from the last presentation where we all learned about how PHP gets written, I guess, some of the funny syntax things. We're going to apply what you learned in the last hour and advance that knowledge and actually write some modules and make that PHP work for Drupal. My name is Matt. I'm Vordude on Drupal.org. I've been doing Drupal stuff for about 5 years. I'm not an astronaut. I do work for a company called Lullabot. We've had the opportunity to work with some great clients. We also have this product called Drupalize Me, which is Drupal training videos. It's a subscription service. I understand that if you like us on Facebook this weekend, you'll get an email for like $10 off or something. It's worth a shot, right? Like it on Facebook. So to be able to understand exactly how we're writing a module for Drupal, I think it's important to understand how Drupal works in the first place, just kind of from that 30,000 foot level. So we'll give that a shot. So there's this idea that is Drupal core. So there is code within Drupal that makes Drupal work. And that code is able to allow modules that come with Drupal core to make parts of Drupal work within code. So like the node system and the user system are modules that interact with Drupal's core code itself. And those modules are just like the modules you can write yourself. Of course, Drupal has this great contributed community. So you can go onto Drupal.org and download something like Views, which you won't have to for 8, right? Or 5-star or Date, and extend your Drupal install to have this great new functionality with these other modules. Yes?
So you're going to put this stuff on the web somewhere?
You bet. I'll put these slides up on the web, on the session page.
On web for Badcamp or
The Badcamp session page is where I'll put it. Yep. So there's also the theme system within Drupal that allows all of this great stuff you're doing in these modules to actually get displayed to your end user. We're only going to care about some of that, the module side of things. So we'll be writing modules today. We'll demonstrate some code. We'll also kind of explain how you're going to be able to take your newfound knowledge of PHP and make it work with Drupal. This is all the code that it takes to make a very basic module. Since we're all PHP experts now, let's take a look at this and just kind of break it down. The stuff that's written up there are in these two files. We have demo.info and demo.module. That's all it takes to make a module. There are two files, a .info file and a .module file. What you name your .info file is what's going to be important for the future. So we have demo.info. We want to make sure we have a demo.module. And within demo.module, we need to make sure that we think about that demo word. Hang on to that in your brain for a second. So demo.info is going to be simple metadata about your module. So what is this module? Does it have any dependencies? What version of Drupal does it work with? So in our very simple demo.info, it's those first 3 lines. What is this module's name? And that's the name as it's displayed on the modules page in the administration side. What is the description that shows in the module administration page? And what version of Drupal does it work with? That's all you need for a very basic info file. You can search on Drupal.org in the handbooks, and you can learn all about the different options you can use. My favorite way of writing a .info file is finding a module that is very similar to what I want it to do, cracking it open, copying and pasting, and be done. Right? Writing code is for suckers. If we can copy and paste, it's going to be great. So within demo.module, we have one simple function called demo node view, and it gets a parameter of node. And what this is actually doing, it's changing the node's title. If it's your article, it's going to say whatever the title is, like about us or something like that, if that were the node title. And if you were the author, you're logged into the site, and if you actually wrote that, it says in square brackets there, this is your article. So it's kind of a simple administrative helper module that would be like, this is your article. If you disagree with it, you wrote it, sucker. Of course, we can get a little trickier with Drupal modules. There's a .install file that's getting added here. A .install file is going to be useful to you if you want to add database tables, alter database tables, doing things when you install your module or you uninstall your module to clean up after itself. All of that stuff happens in a .install file. In this one, all it's doing is just saying, you just installed the module. Great. So we saw it with the tricky one had 3 files, and that was a little tricky. Of course, it can get much more complicated than that. I think this comes from the views module, and it's probably an older version of it because there are just a few more files. A lot more include files and definitely breaking out your code into very specific things. We can get that complicated if we want to. It might not be necessary for you. But yeah, just keep that in mind. So Drupal is built on what's known as the hook system. Is anyone here familiar with the hook system? Yeah? Who's written, I should have asked this first, who's written a Drupal module? Cool. I've got a bunch of fresh minds. So there's this hook system within Drupal. And essentially, it's an event listener pattern that's all framed around what you name your functions in your modules. So as Drupal is actually loading up a page, all of these hooks are firing. Someone just registered. Someone just posted a comment. The database is being queried. So it's this event listener pattern that's something is happening, and it allows your module to be able to jump in and say, yes, I want to do something about that. So I mentioned that it's all based on a naming convention. So if we were to create a hook called hook foo, you can call hook foo or do something when foo is happening by naming a function, whatever the name of your module is, underscore the name of the hook. So with hook foo, many modules, like the their module, .module, can have a function called their module underscore foo, and that's an implementation of hook foo. So it's this naming convention that is like most of what you need for using the hook system. Cool. Question? Yeah, you got it.
So their module.foo, will that override the other module's implementation of that function?
Great question. So the question was, multiple modules are calling this hook. Is there an override process that's happening? The answer is sometimes. There are different types of hooks within Drupal that will do different things, just based on what kind of hook that is. And that's a great transition into this slide that's happening.
So was hook foo a Drupal hook that already existed? Is that?
Hook foo is an imaginary hook.
Where did it come from?
You could make it in your module if you wanted to. Hook foo is just, so there are other hooks, and we'll look into a lot of hooks in the future. If hook foo exists, it's the name of your module underscore foo, and that's how you're going to call that hook. The most important part is you're using the name of your module. Remember I mentioned demo.info?
Right.
So if we have the demo module and we want to call hook foo, we need to name a function demo underscore foo. And that's how your function is going to get called when that hook happens. Cool?
Sure.
So, yeah, there are different types of hooks. So there are hooks that happen that answer questions. Say, hey, I want to know something about current modules that have been enabled. They announce what's going on. They're able to, hit a button and make it all turn black. Cool. Extend what's happening. So I've got something and it's working great, but I want it to be that much better. Or alter something. So that goes back to your question. A hook that is altering does actually give a module the opportunity to override something that's happening. The hook that's asking for information might just add more information to whatever's happening. So it depends on the hook how it behaves when multiple modules use that hook. With alter hooks, it's important to point out that the last hook that runs is the one that's going to win. So he who alters last wins, if you will. And the hook order actually fires, if it's by default, if you haven't touched anything, alphabetically. But there's a database table called system, and inside of the system table there's a column called wait. So in the system table it has all of the modules that is running on your site, and if you change the weight of your module, you can make your hook fire later. So if you adjust, the weight is default 0, and if you want it to fire later, you might bump that up to 10.
If you leave it 0, then it's alphabetical to the other.
Exactly. If two modules have the same weight, they run in alphabetical order. That's something that isn't always going to be important to you, something you don't have to think about. But if you're definitely wanting something to run later, you have to adjust it in the system table, the wait column on your module row. Keep that in mind. So with all of these hooks, you're able to make all of these changes and adjustments and alterations to what's happening within Drupal or other Drupal modules without jumping in and changing those other modules' code itself. So the hook system allows you to not hack core. This is a mantra of don't hack core. The code you download from Drupal.org that is the Drupal package should remain pristine because all of these hooks exist for you to jump in and change what it's doing if you don't like the results. So that shark is going to eat you if you try to hack core. So to just kind of recap this 30,000 foot level of the hook system and how Drupal is working, keep in mind that Drupal is in charge of managing the page. So there's a page request that's happening, and Drupal does something about it. And there are modules that are running within Drupal that are able to respond to events that are happening. So a hook fires, and there's an event, and the module can say, yes, I want that. I want to do something when that happens. And you're able to hack with hooks. So if there are any questions now about that upper 30,000 foot level, I'd be happy to take them. Yeah?
There must be a list of names somewhere that you can look at.
Absolutely. There's a list of hooks that are happening. api.drupal.org is where it's all documented. And in our demonstration, we're going to use that.
I'm still totally lost on hooks. So are there hooks, and then we're adding onto those hooks, or we're renaming them, or?
Hooks happen. So I go to your Drupal site, and there's a hook that fires when I'm viewing a page, viewing a node. And when that happens,
built into Drupal. So
built into Drupal.
The hooks come from Drupal, and then we're just adding our own.
Yes.
With them.
So the hooks are built into Drupal or built into modules within Drupal or other modules you have running on your site. And when those hooks fire, it's announcing to the rest of the system, hey, I've got something important and you might want to listen or do something about it. Every other module in the system can jump in and say, yes, I want to do something by using that naming convention.
So when I write a module, I'm either writing one that listens and does something based on other hooks, or I'm actually writing my own hooks.
Correct. You can write your own hooks that other modules have the opportunity to implement, or you can do something on the basis of something happening. Another question there?
Just not even a question. So is it just a global event handler?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. It's just this big ghetto-fied event listener pattern based on a module name, function naming convention.
One last question.
You bet.
And that is the names themselves in terms of when does this resolution occur? Does a resolution occur at system startup time? Is it continually scanning this list of names? So how dynamic is it, I guess is the question.
The question was how dynamic is it? Like you have these new functions introduced and how is it knowing about it?
Yeah, for example, suppose during runtime, when my site is up,
Yeah.
I introduce a new listener, or
Yeah.
I have to go on and at that point reboot the system to make sure the listener is heard.
You bet. No reboot should be necessary. PHP has a registry of functions known to the system, and that's how this is actually possible. It's this little known use thing, and Drupal's like, yes, I can exploit that. You may have to jump in and do a Drupal cache clear to get your hook picked up, and we'll do that today when we do that. But no reboot or anything like that should be necessary. It also depends on if you've already implemented the function, you can jump in and change that or deploy new code that changes it, and it should be fine. Any other questions? Great, let's write some code. Let's see this work. The Mac is great to make slides pretty, but I'm so not a Mac guy.
It's not showing.
Yeah, I know. I'll get there.
Oh, okay, you just need to. Yeah. Yes.
Cool. So I've got a brand spanking new Drupal install with nothing actually on it yet. And we're going to write a module that does something. The first module, or the first hook we're going to use, is going to just simply display something to a page. Right? That's a very common need. It's like, I've got Drupal, and I want somebody to go to a path, not necessarily anything related to a node. I want to go to a path, and I want to show them something. I've got this great other project that is being used elsewhere, and I want to be able to stuff that into Drupal. We're going to use a hook called hook menu to be able to do that. But first, before we can actually write any hooks, what do we need to make a module?
2 files.
2 files, a .info file and a .module file. And I've already jumped in to do that. Here's Drupal 7. Inside the sites, I have a website called local.module.com running on my local install. And inside of that, I have a modules directory. And I've got 2 modules in there. One is called Bandcamp and one is Badcamp, not Bandcamp, that's slightly different. And one of them is called Continent. So we'll jump into our Badcamp module. We've got a couple of things in here. We have a .module file, we have a .info file, and we have a couple images. I last gave this talk in Texas, and I thought the Texas flag would be important to them. So
Good call.
we did that. I've got the Badcamp logo. You know, it's a little more Badcamp-like. So we've got our .module file and our .info file. So what's our .info file?
3 lines.
Yeah, it's just like a couple of lines. Metadata about the module. So our name is Badcamp Module Development. It has a quick description. It's in a package. Package is when you go to the modules page, they're kind of listed together. So if I go to modules, because I have a .info file, I have this. Because I have a .info file, the module shows up on the modules page. So I can now enable it. And it's this Badcamp Module Development module. So I've got Badcamp Module Development. Here's my description, and it's in the development package.
And if you didn't say package, it would just be in its own little box.
Yeah, if I didn't say package, there's actually a generic one that it would get picked up on, other maybe. Yeah, where all of the rest of them kind of get stuck together. So I've got it in this development package, and that's why it's in that field set. And all of that information about that, the name, the description, the package, and also the fact that it works with Drupal 7. I also added the dependencies on here because we're going to have some fun with the contact module. We need to make sure that the contact module is actually running. So I've added a dependency for contact module. If contact was not installed, when I installed badcamp.module, Drupal would jump in and turn it on for us. So the dependency handling is actually fairly smart. I install the Badcamp module, it says, oh, you need contact too. Cool, it turns it on. So because I have a .info file with that information, it all shows up here. We're just going to jump in and enable it. Save. Cool. So our Badcamp module is now running. What's actually running? Well, I mentioned we wanted to just spit something out onto the page. So I mentioned that api.drupal.org is where we're going to need to sign back into my guest account. And I'm lucky I saved the password. At least it didn't blow out all of my tabs, because it does that, you know, different systems do that. No fun. Great. So api.drupal.org. This is so this is an autocomplete thing. So if there's something that you're thinking you know something about, you can be like, huh, what is this? Node load. That looks like it could be something that's important. I want to load a node, right? So the autocomplete can be helpful if you kind of think you know what you're looking for to jump in and actually search for things. So on api.drupal.org, I looked through it and I learned about hook menu. And it says hook menu. Let's see what that does. What hook menu actually does is it takes a URL and maps it to a PHP function. That's all there is to it. So a request comes to Drupal and it comes to a URL and it says, hey, are there any modules out there that care about this URL? And your module can say, yes, yes, in fact I do. When a user gets there, I want to do something with it. So it can be done. And that's all done within hook menu. If you read through all of this copious amounts of documentation, you'll fall asleep. But it's certainly important that you actually, kind of get a clear understanding of what's happening. The best part about these hook implementations is that when you get down to this code block, it's like, okay, well, how do you actually use this thing? And it's still using the word hook. Remember, we don't want to use the word hook. We're going to drop the word hook, and we're going to use our module's name. So with hook menu, with the Badcamp module, we're going to create a function called badcamp_menu. And then Badcamp's module can implement hook menu. So what this is doing is it's creating an array called items, and it has all kinds of information about the item. And at the end, it returns this array of items to the system. The key to the array is in the square brackets. It's an associative array within PHP, which is fairly similar, if you're familiar with Java, to like a hash table or a hash map in other languages. So it's a key value, simple, basic store of, and the key is in the square brackets, and that key is the URL that we're going to care about. So their example of hook menu creates a path called example, and that path has a title, like you get there, and the page title says example page, and then there's a page callback. That callback is like, okay, I've mapped this URL example to this callback. So a user comes to this URL, great, let's give them a page with this title, and let's do whatever this PHP function does. And the PHP function will be called example page, because that's what we decided we wanted to do within our hook menu implementation. So there's also another couple of parameters there for like access arguments. If you want to restrict access to people who only have a certain role, that's definitely doable here. And then there's also the type. So different type of page callbacks do different things within Drupal, and that's all documented up here. Chances are you want a menu callback or a menu normal item, unless you're doing funny stuff with like a tab system. So like Drupal has like the node view and there's like an edit tab. That's all done with this menu local task or menu default local task. So if you just want a basic page, you can make it a menu normal item, and that basic page will also be available in your menu system, so you can like put it in your main navigation. Or a menu callback is just like a basic, let's route this path to a PHP function, and I don't care about actually sticking it into a menu. Let's write some doggone code, man. I'm tired of talking about it. So in the badcamp module, I've got this function, badcamp menu, and I just went down to that demo and I copied and pasted and changed it to what I wanted it to be. So I'm creating an empty items array, and I'm creating a first element in that array, and the key is going to be bad-camp, and that's going to be the path in hook menu. That's the path we're actually routing to a PHP function. And then there's a page title.
So, wait, so someone's going to go to your site / bad-camp? Is that what we're saying?
Mm-hmm. So someone goes to whatever my site is / bad-camp, and we're giving them a page with this title. And the content on that page is going to be whatever is returned from this function. I've called it callback, but it can be called monkeybot if you want to.
$sign content that gets displayed.
Yeah, exactly. Question back there.
Yeah, so there must be a lot of functions called callback, especially inside your own module and stuff.
Sure.
So a couple of comments about naming, perhaps?
Absolutely. Within PHP, don't name a function the same thing twice.
Thank you.
Yeah, because it will work. So it's important to actually think about what you're naming your functions and your callbacks. So use your module's name as like the beginning.
So modules are all one flat namespace after that?
Yeah, all of your PHP is being parsed if it gets included. So if you have a function named the same, it will have an exception. It'll throw an error and white screen to death.
As you go on and put this up together, can you like use a directory system to go on and put different files in, and inside that directory it's qualified by that name?
Yeah, but the way this works is when you clear your cache, all of the hook menus are looked at and collapsed and put into a database table. So we don't have to look at every module, and we can just do a quick lookup.
So the name should be flat.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So we're routing a path, bad-camp, to this page callback, and we're just going to allow anybody who can access content to see it, and it's going to be a menu normal item. Great, let's see what it does. If we go to bad-camp, I enabled the module, and I had the code there, and it's over here. So I go to my site, bad-camp, hit enter, great. My title was RR Mateys, and it's there, and it's showing up because I told it to. And it's got this picture. How did that picture get here? Well, that's a part of my page callback. That picture could be anything, any sort of stuff you can do within PHP or some web service to some other systems to return data back to your site. All happens within that callback. And my bad-camp callback function down here, all it's doing, and remember that this could be called whatever you want, make it something that's never going to get called again by accident by some other module. So I started with bad-camp, and I just used callback because that's the only callback we're making within this module. And all it's doing is that it's returning this image. It's using the Drupal theme system to say that this is how we can output an image. So it creates this array, of information like the path to the image and alt text. And it says, spit that image out on the page like Drupal spits images out. Yes?
How come you didn't put your title instructions inside of your backend callback? I mean, how come you have two functions? Or, I mean, you have two functions here to accomplish a custom change.
Yeah.
So why did you divide it into two functions? Why not just say, here's what you do when you hit this hook,
Yeah.
and then put all of what you do in backend callback?
And the question is because the title is coming from hook menu and
Yeah,
the data is coming from the callback?
Divide up your,
It's the way Drupal works.
Because the first thing he did was a registration.
Yes.
And the second thing he did was the action. So if you go back to your first function, that is not calling anything. That is registering with the system what should happen
Yes.
when that particular event occurs.
And the title is tied to the registration. The actual
Okay.
title that gets spat out inside of an H1 tag is tied to this part. That's the way
so
Drupal
it's
works.
not viewed as content. It's viewed
Correct.
as- okay.
The
That's
title
it.
is not part of the content on the page callback.
This is a
The reason that
And if you notice when you theme and you're looking at a node on a page, the page title, the actual title H1 is on the page template, not inside of the node template when it's just a node displayed on the theme.
Yes,
That's
it should
true.
create-
We had that yesterday.
You're creating a big runtime linker. And it turns
Yeah.
out some linkers work automatically. This one doesn't. Here you go on and basically create the link record by yourself in this function called that.
I'm not sure how one would work automatically. What are you saying?
And generally what happens if you wound up having a runtime linker, at least going back 40 years ago, you
Okay.
go on and simply state, here are all the stuff, and then by the naming convention, it would automatically link and figure out when it occurs and when it's supposed to occur.
Okay.
Here, the link record is created
Yeah.
manually.
Correct.
is the reason Badcamp menu even gets called is because its last name is underscore menu, and underscore menu is one of the hooks that Drupal knows about.
Yes.
That we
So
looked up on api.drupal.org.
Drupal knows about hook menu. And because hook menu exists, I can create a function called badcamp underscore menu. And so when Drupal says, hey, give me all the menu items that you know about, all of the modules can return with all of those menu items, and that happens on a cache clear. Or like you
So I
module.
can do that to anything that is named hook underscore something. And whatever that something is, I can make it my own underscore that thing.
As long as it's the module name that this function is inside of.
And okay, right, and then from there, then that can call the callback function, and then that can do anything I want.
You got it. Good.
Fine.
Yeah.
So can you show up in the URL how you call the module
How I called the module in the URL?
in the?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have.
If I want to call a PHP script, I just the name of the script.php. So it's the same thing. How would you call?
If you inside of the URL have a name of a script.php, then you have to have that file in your file system. Drupal's menu routing system won't care about it.
Okay, but I'm trying. How do you call it? In that way, I call the PHP function. How did you call that module to run it?
Sure. So if you had some sort of external script that you wanted to jump in here, you would define a hook menu, just like this, with a path of whatever you'd want it to be. And you'd have a menu callback down here. And inside that menu callback, you'd want to include your PHP script, and then maybe call a function or return a function from inside of that PHP script that has the data you want to actually put on the page. Yeah, and the URL is registered with hook menu.
Okay, that's okay.
Yep. Yep.
All right.
And it will fit in your template and look pretty like the rest of your site. Cool. Okay, let's jump ahead, because this is going to get to be a little mind-blowing and we're running out of time. We're going to talk a little bit about the form system and how Drupal works with forms, because every time you turn around with Drupal, everything is a form. So the form system can be kind of a hurdle to your learning module development, so I want to make sure you get a basic understanding of that as well. If we go ahead and go to api.drupal.org, there's a great page called Form API Reference, and you get there from right in the main page, api.drupal.org, Forms API Reference. Your forms are defined by a huge nested array of ugliness. That said, it's a great way to jump in and have your other modules be able to alter forms and change things to your liking. Drupal, you'll find, uses a lot of different arrays in a lot of different ways. But as Fox just mentioned, there are a ton of array functions within PHP. So it makes sense that you would use arrays because you can do a lot of things to manipulate those arrays. So let's keep in mind that forms are defined by a large array of stuff. And what those arrays look like are all documented here on this Forms API reference. There is a hook called hook form alter, which will be your new best friend when you want to change the way a form works within Drupal.
Which forms are, what are we talking about?
I'll show you. We'll show some forms. So if we look at hook form alter, I've written one here that's like a good TV chef would. I'm not going to get there. So here's an implementation of hook form alter. I've replaced the name hook with the name of my module. So I have bad camp underscore form underscore alter. And that looks a little funny because of the there are 3 parameters there and they get stretched out. I've also installed the Devel module, which if you're creating modules, use Devel, D-E-V-E-L. You can download it off of Drupal.org, if only to use the function DPM. So the DPM module is a way to spit out arrays and objects and any sort of data structures onto your page in a very pretty way. And kind of like, let's take a look at what this array is, and you can see it on your page. So when hook form alter runs, it's just going to say, hey, show me the form ID that's running. And you can see the forms that exist. So I've enabled it, and I'm going to jump in. Oops, and I'm not going to cheat. I started to clear the cache with a utility called Rush, which is super handy. But I decided I'm not going to do that. I'm going to show you how it's actually done. If you go to admin config performance, there's this button that says clear all caches. And assuming I actually saved the module when I uncommented out the code, then yeah, I haven't paid for that yet. We take a look here. Now it's just spitting out that this is the form ID. So my DPM is saying, show me the form ID for the form that's on that page. So I have a form here called System Performance Settings. And if we wanted to, we can go back to that API site. We can say, hey, show me System Performance Settings. This is the function that's being used to define the form that we just looked at. So if we go back over here, we have a clear cache button. We have some options surrounding caching, bandwidth optimization, and a save button. So if we look at, yeah.
That green bar that says System Performance Settings is from your module.
This is coming from the code that I just wrote right here. So my hook is firing, and it says, hey, if there's a form that needs altering, tell me what the form ID is, because I really want to know, and put it on the page for me. So that's just some quick debug code on how you can do it.
Any form on the system?
Any form on the system will actually be running right now. So I cleared the cache on the System Performance Settings form, and it showed it to me.
So you cleared the cache not because we needed to, you cleared it to just show us this.
I ended up clearing the cache so that my hook form alter will get picked up.
It did need it, okay.
Yeah. But now I've gone back to the front page, and it says, hey, there was a form that got loaded during the process of that page load. Search block form, because there's a form there for your search block. Configuration, that's not actually a form, but pretty much everything else is. User admin settings.
So this code you just wrote is getting activated all over the place.
Yes.
How do you do this?
This hook is getting fired every time a form gets loaded in the system because there's an alter function in that form load process that says, if anybody wants to do anything with a form, speak now or forever hold your peace. So like article node form here.
And the order, the alphabetical order that you were talking about beforehand too, I guess it looks like you're getting executed first somehow in this thing. Because why do you appear there as opposed to lower down that list of fields is my question.
Sure. The question was, how come that's showing up on top? And it's based on the function that you're actually calling. And keep in mind, the function that it's calling is putting in the blocks on top. It says put it in the Drupal set message, which is one of the last things that gets rendered. Also keep in mind that your any sort of theming and template stuff happens at the very end of the page request process. So it's not like a print. It's here's some data, now put it into your template. Yeah?
How do you find out the order of things firing?
Sure, let's do that. It'll be fun.
Will it match the order of the green boxes that were coming?
Will it match the order of the green boxes that will come in?
You're just going
Yeah.
shiny loaded, yeah. So
Yeah.
you can just write those down and it should match this.
Absolutely. Let's do that. We're going to do this on the fly. I hadn't planned to do this, but we can do it. It'll be fun. Drupal 7, yeah. Inside of this bootstrap.inc file, inside of the includes directory, so I'm in my Drupal install, includes. Bootstrap.inc is the file that has like all of the guts of Drupal, like how Drupal's page request process actually gets up and starts. Do I want, Eric, module?
I'm going to try and answer that question.
Come on. Maybe it's not in Bootstrap. Like I want to just display when a hook is getting called.
It is module implements. It's easier to look at if you have.
Where is it though? So this is the function that is in use to actually allow other modules to say, yes, I have a hook for you to care about. So they use this module implements, and it gets the parameter of like the hook name. So if we find function module implements, it's in module inc, of course it is. So inside of the includes directory, there's this file called module.inc, which is like the guts of the module system. So if we go to function module implements, just like we did before, oops, I want to do it on the other side of it though. We can do like a DPM hook. So if I go back and refresh, this is the list of hooks that are actually being called to produce this page. And that could be useful for you in trying to figure out, well, how did this happen? Maybe I need to search for something.
You just hack core to make this happen?
I did, yeah. But it's for education purposes. Plus, I have all of my code in version control, right? So I know that I hacked core and I can reset it back to normal before I try and commit it someplace else. And I'm not totally an advocate against hacking core. On any sort of project of any size or scope, there may be the need to jump in and make a small change to core. As long as you roll it off of a patch and document it properly within your own workflows. I personally think it's perfectly acceptable. But keep in mind that it makes your updates that much harder. So when a new version of Drupal comes out, you have to compare the part you changed with the new version of Drupal. Chances are there haven't been any changes, but maybe there was some security thing right around the thing that you changed. So you have to figure out how you can make your change now work with the new version. So there's definitely a lot of more effort involved, but it might be necessary. Chances are with all of these hooks that are firing, there's the chance for you to do whatever you want. Question in the back, yeah?
Yeah, it's a little unrelated, but do you think it's good practice to put core and plugins in version control?
Question was, do you think it's good practice to put core and your modules and stuff in version control? I think so, yes, absolutely. I put everything in version control except the settings.php file. I usually have
definitely the theme and
yeah.
And your own modules, but
I keep everything in version control except for the files directory and the settings.php. I think that's about it.
You mean for your own projects?
Yeah.
For yourself, your own version.
Exactly. For if I'm collaborating with you guys, you're on my team, and we're all building this big site, we have everything in version control except for those two things. And if we need the files directory, we can sync it down. But oftentimes it'll just be bloated with gigs of images from the client. You really don't need it. You can use like place kitten or something and just have pretty kittens. Or and settings.php is going to be different for every person, because if I'm running it locally on my machine, my database is going to be different than your database. So we don't want that in version control.
You're not going to be hacking core.
Hmm?
When you consume that it's already in version control.
Hmm?
But I guess you might have a different version. Yeah.
Cool. So there we saw how, yes, there are lots of hooks that are firing.
Can you, 1 second, can you repeat, what is DPM?
Yeah, DPM is a function that comes with the module devel, and it says, hey, I just got passed either a string or an array or an object, and let's spit it out on the page for you to see. I'll show you another example of how it's used. If we go back to the Badcamp module, and we change our implementation of hook form alter. Here, watch this. Hold my beer and watch this, guys. I'm using the same name of a function. I mentioned that that's a bad idea. So I go back and I save it, and I refresh the page, and it says, white screen of death, what's going on? If you look at your Apache log, I've got this handy shortcut to do that. I can see exactly what happened. PHP fatal error cannot declare Badcamp form alter. Because I tried to declare a function twice, PHP says, I don't know what to do. So that doesn't work. So there's my white screen of death. And that can simply be fixed by saying, well, no, silly. Screwed that up. Don't do that. So I commented out the original function, and we'll go back to the new one. Remember, I did the DPM on form ID, and I learned that these are the forms that are being loaded on the page. If there were multiple forms, we didn't actually see that. Say there was a search box in a node form, it would totally say this form loaded and this form loaded. And what we can actually do is a quick if statement here that says if the form ID was contact site form. Remember, I mentioned we're going to mess with the contact module. That was the form ID for the actual contact form. We're going to do some stuff. First of all, just take a look and see what the form is. But we're going to make some changes here first. So I'll comment that out. And if I'm not actually making any changes yet. I look at the contact module. Whoa. Cool, I refresh. Did you see that list there? I refreshed it real quick before I thought about it. That list there was because, remember I went into the module implements and I said, show me the hooks. There are hooks that are firing after the page is getting rendered, and the Drupal set message is called. And so I did the refresh, and those were still waiting in the queue to get shown to me. And those were the hooks that were happening at the very, very end. And so I refreshed again, and I saw my actual DPM on this form array. So remember, forms are in this like big, fairly ugly array with lots of different properties, defining checkboxes, text fields, file upload fields, that kind of thing. And each of these form elements have different attributes that you can apply to them. And we can see that in action if we look at, over here. If we look at this form array. So this is the form that's being used to render this form. We have a name, email address, subject message, send yourself a copy, send message. So if we come up here, we say, oh, there's this name array, and these are the attributes that are being used to create that name text field. So it says, hey, I've got a form element for you. It's called name. It's got a type, and that type is a text field. So the form system says, we're going to show a text field. And there's going to be a title on that text field called your name, and it's just, there it is, your name. There's a little star next to it because there's a required attribute that says true. Anything inside one of these form elements that doesn't have a pound sign or a hash sign in front of it, that doesn't is another form element. Anything that does have a pound sign is an attribute to the element that is its parent. So type, title, max length, default value are attributes to the name element.
So the idea, I guess, is that forms are basically just a big nested set of dictionaries, and it turns out you can add your own dictionary that makes it you want. And assumptions, in essence, that they largely don't interact, they don't interfere with one another. So
Totally.
you can happily add more and more stuff, and it should work.
Heck yeah. Yeah, you bet. Question there.
I'm coming from another language, and what I can get the DPM to print out. One of my big challenges, I'm just trying to figure out the syntax, how to refer to this element. Is there a particular text editor or a tool? Obviously, there's API.Drupal.org. How do I get at the syntax of it? I know it's this, you know.
You're using DPM? Because this is super handy.
Okay.
Click on the element again.
Yep.
It says whatever you are spitting out to call this, this is how you can access it. So I just copied that, and I can go back to here, and I say I'm doing DPM form. Say, well, what's form name required? Save. Go back here and refresh it. form name required is 1 or true. So DPM is like super, like it's become, that has changed within, I don't know when it changed, but when I found it by accidentally clicking again, it was like, holy crap, this is amazing. So let's jump in and actually change this form. It had that big ugly array. Let's do a couple of things. I really don't like this title, contact. It's kind of short with people, and I really don't care if they have a subject in their email that gets sent to me. That's easily done because this form array is editable by any sort of form alter function. So I went to the subject element, and there's that pound required attribute. I'm just going to say false. It's not going to be a required one anymore. And this form name, we're just form name access. Okay. Yeah, it'll just get rid of the name itself. That'll be more clear here in a second.
Can we do form name instead of access? Can we do like value or something?
Yes, totally. The question was, can you just do value? Yes. Anything you can do to a form, you can do within a form alter, and one of them is value. Yeah. So I did name, and I'm just going to get rid of it. Access equals false is a way of hiding a form element from a user. So if we refresh it, we no longer have a name, and we have a subject and a message, and the subject is not required. And that was able to be done by our simple form alter. We're so running out of time. I'm happy to answer questions. I want to get through one more thing. Okay? I've already skipped another thing. Sorry. I'll get you. I'm happy to hang out all day long and talk about this stuff. Remember I mentioned that your module can implement hooks to allow other things to do something as well. I'm going to enable a module that I've written real quick called the continent module. If I just go enable it, I save it. What it's actually doing is it's registering a block with the system. So if I go to structure blocks, I had this enabled previously, so it might be showing up here. Yep. So I have this block I've registered with the system, and I've put it into the blocks display in the sidebar, my continent listing. So if I go home and take a look at it, I've got a block here that says there are 7 continents, and here they are. Did you know that people argue about how many continents there are in the world?
And how many planets there are in the solar system?
Absolutely, right? This is something that can be arguable. So I've got this handy module for you to put on your site that says there are this many continents in the world, and here they are. And I can show you how that works. There are a set of block functions within Drupal. And if we went to api.drupal.org, they would be right there for us. Like hook block view, hook block info. So info is like registering the block with the system. View is like what happens when I'm viewing this block. Save is like saving the configuration for the block. So in my continent module, I have 2 hooks. I have continent block info as a function. It's an implementation of hook block info. And I'm saying there's a new block, and it's called continent listing, and I'm returning this array that defines this block. And we would understand what this array had to look like if we went to hook block info in the API site and read that documentation. So it says, oh, this is what happens to happen, and these are the attributes for this array. And here's an example of how that might be useful to you. So I have a hook block info, and I have this hook block view, and it's saying when I have this continent listing block being shown, let's do stuff. Let's say this is the subject, and it says there are this many continents in the world. I use this format plural function that does the handy, if somebody says there was only one continent, Pangea in the world, then it would not look funny when I have an S for continents. And then there's the block content part of the block array that's getting built. And it's this theme item list, and there's this variables. Well, I built this variables up here, and it says, and this looks really terrible when it's big, but it says we're building a list of stuff, and it's going to be an unordered list, and the values of that list come from this continents array. It's like, well, where does that come from? Continents is like continent get continent data, a little helper function that I wrote. So continent get continent data says here is all of my continents and return them. But before it returns it, there's this Drupal alter function, and this is Drupal alter is exposing hook world alter to any other module that might want to change that. So Drupal alter, and this is the name of the alter hook. So Drupal alter is allowing hook world alter. And when you call hook world alter, you'll get this continents array, and your module can do anything you want to with it. So if I were to go back to my Badcamp module and say, let's change hook world alter, and say, since we're pirates, there are only 2 continents in the world, and it's going to be whatever I see from my crow's nest and everywhere else, because I don't care. So my Badcamp world alter needs to clear the cache here real quick. I'm using a utility called Drush, and I have a bash alias set up to quickly clear the cache. I refresh it, and my module jumped in without changing the original continent module and said, here are these 2 continents, and there it is. So I'm way over time. I'm happy to answer questions until they kick me out of the room. Cool. Yeah.
Pointers to your presentation will be on the Badcamp site?
Absolutely. I'll put the slides, and I'll point somewhere in my code that I wrote to.
Cool. What about the demo modules?
Yeah, I'll get them someplace. I don't know where, but I'll put them someplace.
Another question? So I've been trying to do my own module. I don't want to get into the details, but I'm trying to access the site logo, and I can't find that in the documentation. It's being generated somehow. How can I look that up? Maybe not that specific one, but how can I look something like that up?